I'm Pick from Wyoming, USA, and you're listening to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. As you heard in the intro, my guest today is Pick, and he's here to talk about an event called Maple Fury. This is an event that was hosted by a relatively new company called Pew Pew Pewductions, if I got that correctly, or P3, I believe. This was held just very recently on June 28th, 29th at Two Chicks Paintball in Colorado, USA, with a somewhat interesting theme of a Canadian invasion of the United States, which we'll sort of just leave at that because as Sam often reminds us, we're not here for the lore. So yeah, we'll move on. But this event featured like 4 different factions and there's a bunch of stuff. But more importantly, it was also P3 Productions' very first milsim. So I'm excited to have Pick on to talk about his experience at what often happens at these events, which are super fun, but there's also things that we can see improving upon. So hopefully we're gonna dive into all of that today and have a great conversation.
Oh yeah, but yeah, thanks for as always. Thanks for having me on the show, Phil. Very much like being on here. You are completely right. It was Pew Pew Pewductions, or P3 is how I've heard it called a lot of times around here, and is often how we talk about it on their Discord server. It's a group of players. This is not any of their first milsims. Like, a lot of these players have been playing for years upon years, and just now they're getting into the realm of running games and whatnot. Mm-hmm. And this is also a group of guys that plays nearly every weekend. From talking to them and whatnot, they play every weekend down at Dynamic Paintball, Paintball and Airsoft, Go Airheads down in the Erie, Colorado area, and the Fox Airsoft Fields as well, which is part of Fox Airsoft. They're 5 acres farms. So you'll very much see those guys very often running with each other, so they know each other very, very well. I was very much an outsider coming into this, even though it's pretty close. The AO was closer to my home than it was to a lot of theirs.
Gotcha.
So it's a good time. This company is brand new. It just got introduced, and they started talking about it this year. They've run, I believe it was, I might be wrong on this, but it's 3 events before this. But none of them were tailored to the kind of milsim that most of the people listening to this probably are used to. Most of the events that they have done are more on a significantly smaller field. So they're a little bit more staged. They are military themed, like actions and whatnot. So rather than showing up to one of these events and having it be an open play, just organized with green versus tan, there's a storyline here. There's a lot more props that we'll talk about props here in a little while. There's a lot of organization that's going on here, and this was their, I think, 4th event of this particular season, but their first sort of bigger, drawn out milsim event, all things said and done.
Yeah, if I remember correctly, you were telling me that one of the friends of the show, Big Red, was rolling with you at this event too. Hey,
absolutely. Though rolling against is more
okay.
Big Red was the tan sides CO for this, a lot like he was at 1861, put on by American Milsim. He was down there. He actually was kind of funny. I've met him before and chatted a little bit with him off and on. But end of the Saturday iteration, it's not a continuous event like Milsim West. Just to squash that expectation, it ended at 7:00 on Saturday. And just talking, I was asking a lot of the staff, since my home is about an hour from this AO. I just asked, hey, does anybody need anything? Does anybody need ice? And at the time I was wearing a Storm Rider shirt, and somebody pointed out, and it was like, wait a second, like, I know Storm Riders. I'm like, yeah. And they pointed at Big Red and they're like, he was on the podcast. And it's funny because I was like, I'm on the podcast. It was a same hat situation. They're like, wait a second, you're the helicopter guy. I'm like, yeah, I'm the helicopter guy. but yeah, it super cool. Big Red, always a good time to roll with him. I don't know if we have any of the other staff in the Storm Riders server, but their Discord, the P3 Discord, is very open. So, quick little plug for them. If anybody wants an invite to that afterwards, please get with me. I'll get you an invite and welcome you into that community there for sure.
So what was this? What was the overall setup for this? I was reading on their briefing page and stuff. Like 4 different factions are listed up there. Like you had like the typical green versus tan, and then there's also like a civilian faction, and then like a black camo, white camo type situation, kind of like Sierra Dynamics at AMS. Like
this entire thing is modeled very much off of AMS because AMS in 1861 has had a lot of traction in the Colorado Airsoft community every time they've come out. We've always sold out on their tickets, and it's been a really good sort of memorable event. It's also viewed, from my perspective, I didn't get Joe. Joe's the owner. I'm going to mention his name a lot on this. Wonderful guy. His call sign's Princess. I'm sure he's going to see this at some point, but talked with Joe a little bit, so I don't know if this is his actual perspective. But American Milsim is a very approachable milsim. This was a lot of people's first organized event or organized milsim that we'll talk about a little bit more as well. You are completely right that it is a tan versus green. Tan is your American Defense Force. It's just pretty much NATO camos or arid camos for the most part. Gear color doesn't matter, a lot like American Milsim. You had a militia faction, which was Hawaiian shirts or flannel shirts with pretty much any color combination of pants, whether that's jeans or the faction that you're rolling with. In this situation, they were paired up with American Defense Forces or tan. And then your green side was Eurasian Axis of Power, which was included mostly Canada. So it's weird that that's the Eurasian Axis of Power. Again, like you said, we're not in here for the lore, but that was the faction that I was playing with. So I somewhere around here, I actually embroidered a one of their flags. I just had it subdued and made it, but it looks dead on a Canada flag, man. Just, rather than the 3 bars being vertical, the 3 bars are practically horizontal. So it's a little funny. It's one of those things I was like taking. I'm sure it posted in the server. I had taken a few like cosplay because it's fun showing up to these events and having like a storyline and being well dressed. In my opinion, it just makes it a bit more for me at least. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my god, I just look like some Canadian guy wearing M81.
Yeah.
Like,
you couldn't splurge for the cat pad, hey? But that's fine. We'll forgive that.
No, I already had M81 sitting around, and I like God's Plaid a little bit. But anyway, you also had they're not Sierra Dynamics. It was Diamond Contracting, something Diamond Contracting. They're black, gray, wolf gray, multicam Alpine, multicam black. If you want to wear cool guy camo, we had a very slim number of players playing that faction this time around. Most of the people on the green side playing with me were all some kind of green camo, whether that was just Ranger Green or M81, or there was actually one guy, ACU in this universe is considered a green camo. There was one guy rocking ACU, which was kind of cool to see again. It's making a comeback.
Yeah, John on our team dies for ACU. As a side note, he dies for ACU. He thinks it's the best. Like I got like an ACU pouch randomly from a surplus store for my belt kit, and it was the only one they had available, but it was like $3. So I'm like, yeah, whatever, it's $3. And he was like, oh, you're going ACU, and he had like ACU pants. I was like, no, let's pump the brakes on the ACU. That's just not coming back. He's like, no, it's coming back, just like you said, right? So yeah.
I've still got some ABU uniforms from my early Air Force days running around somewhere. So maybe one of these days I'll raid mod one of those and do something with that. But regardless, the setup for it at this point, again, tan green with those outlying factions. There were a lot of people that were playing the militia side, and we saw an interesting dynamic there because Joe's intent behind the militia was some people that came to an event have not been to a whole lot of milsims before, and they don't need all the Gucci gear. They don't want to bring a JPC and a pack and a kitted out gun. You can put on jeans, some hiking boots, a flannel, and a chest rig, and you are ready to rock and roll.
Mhm.
We saw like maybe one or two of those people, but a significant other portion of that were people that just wanted to play militia, that wanted to put on flannel and play, even though they had some very, very capable guns, and some very, very capable gear, that just wanted to play militia. Which, hey, that's pretty cool. Maybe one of their next events, that's something that I might do because it sounds comfortable, right?
Mhm.
Um, the what we also saw there, and this was really cool and warms my heart, but there was like a dad and son, or a dad and daughter that were out there, where the dad was, just wearing flannel and jeans, and their kid was in, completely kitted out and everything else. It was really cool. Reminded me a little bit of Matt. So
Yeah, you
certainly
love to
warmed
see
my.
that.
You'd love to see that. It really warmed my heart, and was very awesome to see. The lore behind it up to this point was that Eurasian Axis of Power, the green side, had conducted a sort of invasion of the United States after some other like cultural breakdowns had happened. And at that point, they had pushed all the way into sort of the Rocky Mountain front, essentially the area about north of Denver, and we're currently trying to establish a bridgehead there in order to enlist the help of their the Eurasian brethren that could come in and potentially reinforce the first wave in, which was the Canadian forces in this case,
Mhm.
which was cool. We didn't see a whole lot of that lore necessarily incorporated throughout the day, which was a little interesting. The timeline of it worked the same way as you would see for most typical Milsim events. You saw, a Friday being a check-in, Saturday was a day of showing up, some last-minute chrono if you needed it, and then a whole day of play. And then Sunday was starting at roughly the same time and ending about mid-afternoon, weather permitting, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit. So pretty standard event as far as Milsims go, from what my experience has been, at least. Your mileage may vary, but it's a way we've seen, and it's a way that we've seen work. A lot of people rolled in after work got out on Friday, so can't blame them for that, right?
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah.
So,
How many
but
players in was this event? Like you think about AMS events, like they can be quite large. Like how many were you dealing with for Maple Fury?
this was small. This was probably about 100-player event max. When you included in staff with that, those numbers ballooned a little bit. They had a whole lot of staff and a whole lot of support structure there. Uh, but all said and done, it was a fairly small event, about 100 players, give or take. Um, Green was outnumbered, I want to say, by about 15 players in the first day, is I think the number that I remember, but I could be wrong on that. That might be something that I might be misremembering.
Mhm.
Um, and
And how big is the play area in general? Like, is that suitable for 100 players, or is it like really big? Like, what was the setup like in terms of space?
I would say it was perfectly sized. Two Chicks
Okay.
Paintball, so a little bit of history from what I heard this weekend. Two Chicks Paintball was actually the site of the largest U.S. airsoft event up to that point back in 2001.
Oh
So
wow.
before I was playing at that point, back in the wee old days.
Hmm.
Apparently, that event was a 400-player event. I do not understand. I do not know how one could get 400 players on this field without it feeling like a pinball machine. This was about 70 acres all said and done. The mapping software that I used showed me that it was approximately 450 meters wide east to west by a little bit more than 800 north to south. Now, given almost all of that was playable, there was only some area down in the southwest corner that had some extremely gnarly rock formations that the admins took out of play, for good reason. Like somebody would have gotten hurt, and people kind
Hmm.
of already got hurt here and there just due to the heat all day. But Two Chicks, great field. It's a lot of rolling terrain. It's a lot of it's in the foothills of the Rocky Mountain front. So you've got a lot of kind of like rolling, lots of good defilade, lots of good like I'm not a geologist, so I don't know what kind of rock, but lots of like built-in uh, like rock formations sticking up everywhere that you could like boulder over if you really were crazy about it, or you could work your way around. Lots of kind of like not underbrush, but like undergrowth and grass with lots of like pine trees and whatnot. And there were some gnarly areas there. The north side of the field dropped off a fair amount, so in order to get back to the south side of the field, you would have to climb a fairly significant hill there. And that area was pretty open, but it was built up to be closer to a paintball field. So lots of things like your pallet bunkers, your big,
Mm-hmm.
wire spool creations and whatnot, which was honestly built up well. It was a good um, it was a good combination of like good hard cover with the rocks and the pallet formations, and soft cover with the kind of like scraggly bush and whatnot. The downside with it is, with it only being 400 or 450 something meters wide, is your sight lines were everywhere. You could almost
Mm-hmm.
immediately the fobs themselves you couldn't see because there was enough rising terrain in the way. But as soon as you got on either side of those and started working your way into actually good positions, man, you could be like, oh look, there we go, 15 an element of tan about 15 meter 15 size uh, going to the north. It was very easy to see, and these aren't ranges that you can necessarily shoot at, but they're still ranges that you could very much easily see. Like no movements were necessarily hidden for
Mm-hmm.
this whole event, which
Yeah.
was a stark difference from the last milsim that I went to, which was Stag Ops that we talked about in the show, where you could walk 50 meters into the woods and be completely invisible. It's like nobody could see you
Yeah.
there. So um,
And I guess too, like the rolling terrain, especially for someone's like first milsim, do you find that players in that community are accustomed to that kind of terrain? Because like rolling terrain is not easy for like, let's say, novice hikers and stuff like that. So I can only imagine that a first time airsofters showing up to an event like that being like, wow, I'm getting my ass kicked right now. Like this sucks.
I maybe a little bit. So the field was up at it was up at 8,000 feet, so rather high
Yeah.
for considering that a lot of these players came up from the Denver area, which is about the 5 to 5.5 thousand feet. Um, for example, Cheyenne is at about 6,000 feet here, and even just the moving the 2,000 feet up really kicked my butt a little bit. I'm also not in as good a shape as I probably should be, just due to some work stuff. But regardless, it's a challenging AO for sure. The other thing with it being that high, it's weird, but you're closer to the sun, so you get sunburned a lot quicker. It's dry, so you get dehydrated a lot quicker too. I would wager that the AO that probably a good 50% of these players are used to playing on a weekend, day to day basis is probably more of that sort of flat. Uh, uh, I call it like the Rocky Mountain Desert, where there's once you get east of Denver, a lot of things are flat. It looks like a desert, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of people are probably more used to playing in that and potentially resetting rather quick. However, we didn't really see a whole lot of players dropping out because of that reason. We didn't see we only had one heat cat injury, all things said and done, which is not bad. We had one other individual who cramped just in one of his legs pretty bad, which is one of the first possibilities of heat exhaustion, right? But he was very much still on his feet. He was, his dexterity was fine. His perfusion was fine. So I wouldn't necessarily call that a heat cat. That's just exertion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we saw a lot of people, just because of the nature of this AO, it's easy to go out. A lot of the objectives, like farthest objective from each other, was, I want to say, 700 meters by as the crow flies. So like worst case, if you're going and doing a mission over here, okay, and then going across the map, that's only 200 meters from fob, and then another 700 meters down. So a 900 meter with just raid gear on, that's not terrible, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that. I mean, again, challenging AO, but nothing to the point that we had players dropping left and right. That was, in my opinion, probably for morale and some other different reasons that we can certainly get into as well. But challenging AO, but the players did really well, all things said and
Good.
done.
So what was your overall like gameplay like objective? Like so let's go through sort of the not the action the after action specifically, but like what were your overall objectives? What were you trying to do, and like how did all of that shake out?
Sure. The objective, as much as I hate to say it, the objective was to win, and in order to win, it was to put more points on the board than the other faction did. Um, I'm sure we could have the conversation on how that kind of milsim is. That's a different kind of flavor of milsim than what some players might be used to, or that
Yeah.
some players might be looking for. But it's a really easy rule structure to stand for, and also it slots in really well with P3's other events. So that's not something that I would personally knock them for. Um,
Mm-hmm.
in order to put points on the board, there were certain missions that had to be accomplished. In order to accomplish those missions, there was, starting from FOB, you essentially had to surge forward to this this thing called a prop point, where there were essentially a selection of different mission materials that you could select to bring back to FOB in order to actually start that mission in the first place. Given I didn't get a look into how the sausage was made because I was talking with Joe about a lot of other things, but my impression of it, at least, was that you brought that prop back, you would start that mission, and completing that mission gives you a point value. Now, that point value can change based off of how many capture points across the field that you already hold. Those capture points, there were 6 of them all said and done, like 3 on both sides of the field. So it was really easy and accessible to get to. And there were certainly a few of them that you could practically just sprint to out of the FOB as long as you could make it there and you could capture. The capture points themselves, it's not like Stag Ops does it where there's like, a sheet of paper that you sign and you take a picture of and send it. P3 actually had these Arduino, I think they were Arduino at least, powered boxes that ran off of Airsoft batteries that were weatherproofed and stuck on posts. It was cool because you walked up, you pressed a button for 10 seconds, it would say something on an LCD screen, and then you captured the point, and it automatically stored all of that information. Now, based on how many of those capture points you hold, it was a score multiplier for the mission that was created, or it's a score multiplier for if you stop the other faction from accomplishing one of their missions. The defend point value was significantly less than the attacking or like the advantaged side point value. Like only like 10 versus 30 points. Again, I didn't really get a whole lot of a look into the scoring and how that was actually made, but it was well done, and all things said and done, especially with this size of AO. It was balanced fairly well, all things said and done. So in order to get there wasn't necessarily an overarching storyline as far as one of these things led to another, but as you've probably witnessed from like running milsims before, and I know you've talked about it, like sometimes the script that you have in your head is not what actually happens on the field. Yeah. Players do weird things, and sometimes things falls apart and you have to just react, right? So there was like, for example, there were different, setting up missiles in order to use across the field. There was like a quote unquote underground fiber optic cable that had to be found, and then that would lead you to an IED that you then had to disarm with another prop. At one point, there was a downed drone on the field, which was, from the pictures, if you go on P3's Facebook page and just look up the pictures of this drone, I thought, oh, this thing is made out of 4-inch PVC pipe. I could pick it up by myself. No, this was huge. It was like a 6, probably even bigger than that, like an 8-inch corrugated pipe, probably about 10 feet long. It didn't fit in a truck bed with these massive wings and whatnot. You were not moving it. You were not moving it without a truck. So really cool props that my big, huge takeaway in the AIR that I've written up is P3's got some damn good props, and they've got a really, really good team that is dedicated to making these sort of things work. Some of the capture points just had some technical difficulties. When you're managing 6 across a 70-acre AO, yeah, you're going to have some that go down. There were probably a little bit of polish on the props that maybe could have done a little bit differently, but like incredible. That was cool compared to, for example, American Milsim's 1861, where half of the props were just painted bricks. Yeah, that's pretty awesome. That's significant to me, and it shows.
It adds a lot to the players. Not for everyone, surely, because some people don't care, and that's fine. But like to have that tactile element to like, oh, this is a missile. Like clearly, it reads like a missile, and I'm doing something with this missile, or this is a box, and like the Arduino, like that type of tech is really cool, and it adds production value essentially to your event, but it adds experience. A unique experience for the people who interact with those props, like using real, like not real money, but like play money instead of like Monopoly money or something like that. You know what I mean? So I totally see the value there.
Like, for example, there's just some of the fit and finish on these props. Like, for example, the missile had like a domed seeker head, like an IR missile would have. And in order to actually arm it, there was a USB drive that you had to transport to this missile as you got the different missile components from various other parts of the field. You had to unscrew the top of that seeker head, install this USB drive, screw it back in. Like that sort of stuff that it's not just a missile made out of a 6x6 that's been rounded down. It is a good, solid prop. And
Mm-hmm.
that's cool. That's awesome. Like you said, it really added to the experience for sure. My interaction with the props themselves was fairly limited this weekend. The only time that I probably had any hands-on was there were a large amount of biohazard water containers that were scattered across the AO, and it's like, hey, you're on an expeditionary force, you're going to have to scavenge for water, and part of that is going to be clearing this potentially contaminated water for you. In order to do that, you had to bring a sample back, a sample of the water in these little like mason jars. You had to bring them back to FOB. Those had to then get tested, and those were tested with like, I'm not a chemistry major, I don't remember it, but I remember from like basic college chemistry class that there were like things you could put in acids and bases, and they would change color based on what you put into it and what the substance actually was. And you brought that back, and that got tested right in front of you using stuff like that. So I think somebody on staff, maybe Joe, maybe whoever else, probably has a background in chemistry and has access to that sort of stuff. Because you would take that back and it'd be like, oh, okay, cool, this water just tested pink. And you would have to bring back a buffer solution that took all of that pink or that blue or whatever that was out of the water. So like before your eyes, you saw that this water got purified, which is cool. It's really cool, and you got the points for that. But
someone was paying attention in chemistry class.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just stuff like that. It's like, wow, I never would have thought of that from an airsoft perspective. Like, that's cool. Like that's somebody's call them autism hobby. That's somebody's autism hobby that's gotten brought into the airsoft realm, and
totally
super, super cool. But yeah, I'm having trouble remembering what the original sort of question was here.
So like what were you doing? So you mentioned like you didn't have a whole lot of like hands-on time necessarily with all the props, etc. Like what was your role, I guess, on your team? Like what were you trying to do? What were you trying to accomplish specifically?
Sure. In this situation, I was just a grunt. I was a rifleman for Whiskey 2 was our squad name. There were 2 platoons. There was a Whiskey platoon and a Victor platoon, and there were squads divided up. 3 squads is what we did over on the green team. I'm not sure what Tan did because I never got to see their roster. But I was just essentially supporting, right? I had reached out. Those of you who have interacted with me in the past, my love of planning and my love of cartography and that sort of thing. So I had reached out to Joe, and I had reached out to my platoon leads earlier, and I had started putting together a Cal Topo map. The basic map that got sent out by P3 was very basic, and it was a screenshotted or snipping tooled Google satellite image with a very bare bones Microsoft Paint battleship grid laid over it, and that works. It works just fine. It's decent. It's very easy to read if you're not around reading maps much. But it was very blurry. Didn't have any kind of topography, which you definitely needed for this field. And the thing that I always talk about is most of the time, if you've got like a Garmin watch or any kind of other off the shelf GPS or anything like that, you will probably be using either lat long or some kind of, USNG or MGRS. And a battleship grid, unless you have a KML file or some other kind of like JSON file or something that can be overlaid into that GPS, the battleship grid is useless to you relating to that. So I had talked to Joe. I had talked with my platoon leaders. I had printed out this 2 foot by 3 foot map that had been MGRS referenced, that had topo information on it, that used a different aerial imagery service. It's a free service called CalTopo, but there's also a paid version of it that I use for backcountry mapping. I printed out a big version of that, and then I'd also printed out a bunch for our squad leaders and our platoon leaders. And those, everybody wanted one of those. They were all waterproof. They worked really well. They had topography on them. They were scaled. They just didn't have the battleship grid. But with our minds combined, we kind of drew the battleship grid onto it. So at least we had some situational awareness, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
quickly kind of got the title of the EAP's cartographer, or the map guy, the nav guy, which was cool. That's kind of my jam. I like that. I love that stuff. So from that, when we first kind of set off on that Saturday, I just kind of played Rifleman. I had that MGRS scar built by WishTech. It was my first day fielding it at a sort of longer milsim event that wasn't just open play. And it was search and destroy, capture areas, capture points, so that we could go on these missions, secure these areas so that we can go on missions. After a while, I got separated from my squad pretty early. We just had some issues with radios, and then a lot of us were trying to run ATAC based off of Meshtastic, which is good in theory. The implementation in this situation wasn't necessarily the best because we didn't have a whole lot of time to sync up beforehand. I got paired up with the Whiskey platoon leader. His call sign was Popeye, and we got to talking and kind of just became thick as thieves for a little bit. Because it was just, we had like two squads drop it. It was just him and me kind of running Overwatch on this ridge line, making sure that we weren't getting pinched or anything. And at one point he said, "Man, you're my new favorite guy out here." I'm like, "Oh, that makes me feel really, really good." So I kind of got chopped to him because I was talking to event staff. They're running digital radios, which is really good, but they're giving out their own radios to platoon leads and then checking those back out at the end of the event,
Yeah.
or platoon leads and squad leads, I should say. So I didn't get on their same radio net beforehand. I wasn't aware that they were running digital radios until sort of last minute. But they had extras, and I have a dual comm set up. That's certainly my jam. So initially I thought that my squad lead was potentially, if he takes a hit, sweet, I can jump in and run squad comms. That never happened. Our squad lead, not sure if he's going to watch this or not, but absolutely solid. And this was one of his first few milsim events. And my hat's off to him. Dude, you did an incredible job. He was always rallying people, always getting people to go get back up and go out there. You know, that kind of like funk when you're on the losing team. You're just kind of getting your teeth kicked in again and again. Every time you go out, you drop all your bodies within the span of a 2-minute firefight. And it's just like, what are we doing wrong? Then he came back, he'd be cheery, he'd reload real quick, be like, "Okay, guys, get back out there." Like, dude, his mental attitude was better than mine, honestly. But what happened is I started running platoon comms for Popeye off and on, just making sure that he was catching things. I didn't make a whole lot of decisions for him. I was just kind of a sounding board, a backup for him, which was fine, which was great. Later on through the day, just sticking with, they had these guys called Advanced Combat Engineers, or ACEs, which were event staff that were players but knew the look behind the curtain. They knew kind of what you had to do for each and every mission, all said and done, so that they could immediately go, "Sweet, we're going to the missile. Sweet, these guys are kind of stalling out. Hey guys, here's what you need to do for the missile," right? And it made sense for the war. These guys they're combat engineers. They know what they're doing. They know how to do these things. So I kind of got lumped in with them a little bit. There was one VIP mission at the end of the day on Saturday that I took off with one of the aces on. He was also Air Force at a base near here. So him and I just also went same hat and realized that.
Yep.
So that was. But other than that, I mean, I was the map guy, and I was just a grunt slinging BBs, right? So.
What was your golden moment from Saturday, like for you specifically?
I'll be honest, Phil, I don't know if there was one. The overall sort of overarching point or the overarching takeaway from this event, you've talked about it before, but there are days that you have to lose in Airsoft. There always has to be a winner. There always has to be a loser. And sometimes you're just facilitating somebody else's fun, all things said and done. Sometimes that's what you got to do. And this was definitely a lesson or a reminder about just what that is. Tan outplayed green this weekend single-handedly. I mean, just there is no question in my mind about that. part of that was we had a lot of new players, probably about 15 new players on Greenside. This was their first milsim ever, and like they can count on one hand the number of airsoft events they'd been to. Whereas Tan had two dedicated milsim teams that came out and came very much ready to play. And my hat's absolutely off to them as far as how well they did things. Every time that we got in a stagnant firefight for a while, they were already sending reinforcements in to come and pinch us or flank us in some way. And that is how you win at Airsoft. They did a very, very good job at that. And not throwing any shade at my green brethren, like we fought a good fight as well, but we got outplayed. Simple as that. We very much got outplayed. Thinking through it, Saturday, I don't know, like it's hard to think of one good defining moment just because we were getting rolled up a lot. We had, I don't remember if that existed on Sunday or if that was on Saturday. Golden point from this weekend, me and one of the players from a airsoft team called Band of Brigands. I'm not sure if he wants his name shared on public media or whatnot, so I'll refrain from that. But him and I were sitting sort of at the top of this ridgeline. His team had cut down to try and gain a little bit of ground along the flank of one of Tan's, so we were kind of holding this top and just lobbing shots. We had one guy that moved across to try and join his element that we both put a bunch of shots down on, and he kind of stumbled. He stumbled hard, and we weren't sure, like, did we hit him? Because he's not putting his hand up. He's not pulling a dead rack out. He's just kind of like sitting there. And we both kind of drop our guns. We're like, that doesn't seem right. And he looks down. He kind of like limps off the field, right? And I said, nope, that's not good. That's not good at all. So I gun down, pull my dead rag out, and run up to him as he's kind of making his way up to his friends, and just ask him like, hey, dude, what's going on? And like, you good? Like, we saw all of that. Like, you didn't seem okay. He's like, yeah, dude, I'm cramping super bad. That was the dude cramping in this calf that I was telling you about. So I ran about 150 meters uphill to our fob, grabbed the cold water from a cooler, grabbed, I had so many liquid IVs, Phil. I had liquid IV after liquid IV stashed from my bag, grabbed one of those and, hoof it back down to him down this hill. He came up to me after the event on Sunday. It was like, dude, you were liquid IV guy, right? I'm like, yeah. He's like, dude, thanks, man. Like, I didn't realize like how much I needed like salt and electrolytes at the time, but like, thanks, you made the day. Like good playing, good everything. So the only other time that I can think of that was kind of a good tactical moment was faction leadership on Tan side realized that we were just kind of demoralized and getting our shit kicked in. So they pulled a lot of their guys back, put like 4 of their squads on lunch. At that point, of course, we knew that was happening. Our CO, Joe, relayed that to us, and we made a push ourselves. And we made a really good pincher ambush on a Tan element that I was the far right flank for. And it went really, really well. We pushed them hard. We did a textbook pinch on him, and it worked really, really well. It was no different than what a standard airsoft movement should actually be, but it worked. And we shook hands with the Tan players afterwards. They said, "Hey guys, that was textbook. Good job. Like you did exactly what you should." And the scar was singing for that particular engagement. So I was very happy that the money that I had spent and had given to James Wisher there was well worth it at that point. So.
It's so interesting to me. Like there's a couple of things that you said that just really stand out to me. Firstly, I think the fact that your first like golden moment is like helping somebody else who is not necessarily having a great time. I think that speaks volumes to what you are like as a human, just in general.
Fair.
But I think that recognizing that, hey, hang on, wait a minute, that guy doesn't seem cool, and now it's my responsibility to go and like interview, like super, super awesome, right?
Yeah.
And would that guy have been fine if you hadn't done anything? I mean, probably.
I would.
But the reality is that you were the one who stepped up and helped him out, which is super cool, right? So that I think it is great. The other thing that you said that really stands out to me is just the recognition that, you know what, like some days it's just not gonna go.
Oh no.
And there's a whole lot of reasons why it's gonna be that way. Like if you are on a team that is outnumbered and also outskilled because you have a lot of like newer players, like that unfortunately is, it's the whole like sucks to suck mentality. But the reality is like, you watch any professional sport, the best team in the league will play the shittiest team in the league,
Yeah.
and generally speaking, that's not going to be awesome. Or like you watch the Olympics and it's like Canada plays hockey against like Uzbekistan, and it's like that's just
Yeah.
it's tough, right?
It's,
And being able to recognize that, like, hey, that doesn't speak ill of me. That doesn't say anything about me negatively, right? It's just like that's the kind of day it was, and being able to smile about it, I mean, is
oh, yeah.
remembering it's a game, right?
Yeah, there was a heck of a lot of that. Like anytime that, me and some fellow players would get hit and we're just sitting there with our dead rags on waiting for our bleed out. It's like, well, there was a lot of, the whole shrug and like, this is the way it goes. Like you said, there was a lot
Yeah.
of that. And yeah, we did break the dead men don't talk rule, but I mean, I don't think it wasn't really helping us anyway when we say, well, it's the way it goes.
Yeah, away she goes, bud. Like, what are you
Yeah.
gonna do?
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like the feeling, especially kind of like that like 5 o'clock point on Saturday when we saw the score and it's like, oh my god, we are, oh boy, it
Mm-hmm.
was bad. It was at one point like 490 points to 40, like bad. It felt a
And
lot
that's
like
tough. Yeah.
I used to play youth hockey when I was younger, and like I was a very late bloomer as far as putting on weight and becoming a going through puberty kind of guy. And there's a game that I can remember where it's like we came out of the locker room. It was like second year of Pee-wees. Come out of the locker room, and the score was 9-2, and it's the start of the third period, and like the other team's got this killer line of four guys that are linebackers, and you're just
What are
you
you gonna
can't you
do?
can't give up at that point because you got to keep playing, and you're going to learn something if you do keep playing, regardless. And
Yeah.
you're also still probably still making the game for somebody else, whether that's somebody on the opposing team or somebody in our team. That squad leader that I was talking about before, Whiskey 2 squad leader, it was also his dad was there as well. Had the time of their lives. We're having an incredible, awesome time going on the water mission like we talked about before. There was one individual in Whiskey. Was it Whiskey 3 or Whiskey 1? I don't remember. But he took his squad on an encirclement, essentially, where he kind of bushwhacked it literally the entire way around the perimeter here, and got within, certainly got up to the limit of advance for Tan's Fob, and set up apparently some really good ambushes, some really good firefights over there. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, sure, if me just banging my head against the wall of Tan and dying off and on enabled that, then that's great. He had a good time. And honestly, like, he had a fantastic time, all things said and done.
Yeah.
Um, so,
But it's
if,
definitely tough. Like, I take your point too, yeah, and as an event organizer too, like, it sucks when you see that your event is lopsided for whatever reason, because
yeah,
your reflex is, oh, the people who are losing are not having a good time, and in some cases that absolutely is the case. When you're getting creamed, it's like, oh my god, like, do I need to intervene as a game organizer? Like, what am I going to do? Like you were talking about
mm-hmm.
one team pulling back, and very much like I remember when we played at Iron Horse, like on the second day where they're like, oh well, they're giving cost an early deployment into the village. We were like, okay, well, we won, because if we hadn't won, then they wouldn't be doing that,
Sure.
right? And so it can feel a little cheap in some ways when that happens, but it's like, as an organizer, at some point, this is still a competition,
Right.
right? And one team is gonna have to win, and if it's 9-2 or 490 points in the difference, like,
Yeah.
yeah, that sucks, but that doesn't necessarily mean that that's not fun. And I've had this experience as an organizer too before, where one team just completely dominates the other side, and I'm like, oh my god, people are gonna hate this. And no, like, they're not like thrilled that they lost so bad. Like,
Yeah.
nobody's like, yay, but like, they're not like, I hate it every minute. They're like, no, like, this was cool, like, I would maybe change this, or this could be improved next time, but overall I'm glad I went, right?
Absolutely. And like, same thing happened here. There were a lot of people that were asking when I went home on Saturday night. They're asking, hey, are you coming out tomorrow? Like, I wouldn't judge you if you didn't. And I said, yeah, of course I'm coming out tomorrow. Like, I'm not about to bail on this event. Also, like,
Mm-hmm.
Colorado Airsoft, there's a lot of people in it, but there's not a whole lot of organization in it. Not from my experience of playing in it for about 2.5 years at this point. So anything I can do to kind of like help that and foster that. And you can also easily tell that Joe really cares. Joe and Jason both very, very much care about this company and care about it doing well. And hell, I'll throw money at that. Absolutely. Any day.
Yeah.
For sure. 100%. Yeah, there was, and I'll also say like the sportsmanship this weekend was good. Even though green was kind of getting creamed a fair amount there, it's very easy for tensions to run high. And, for people to start, shouting, call your hits from one side. And that there's never a really good reason for that. But compared to a lot of other events that I've seen, this event went really, really well as far as that goes. Only a very small handful of times that people got, so heated and up in arms that people are starting to shout stuff like that. And typically once you've reached that point, like you dude, go back to fob, count backwards from 100, because we've all been there, been on the receiving end of fire where it's like, yep, I know I'm probably dead in this guy's crosshairs, but there's this bush right here in front of me that not a single BB's making it through. And he doesn't know that, but I do. And he probably thinks that I'm cheating. So stuff like that.
Yeah.
And honestly,
So
anytime we had a good
ahead.
engagement with Tan, afterwards, there is a searching rule, which is cool. I carry a bunch of honey straws that I've never actually been given intel in any of these events to go and, give to somebody, but I always give a honey straw to people just because, it's a little shot of blood sugar is good for the soul. And every single time, 10 people were always like, hey, sorry for the double hit, sorry for the bonus ball. And there were always reasons for that. If there's anytime you shoot one BB, there's always 10 more coming behind it. So
100%. Yeah.
So
if you look at this event, holistically and like there's obviously like aside from the game balance and stuff, like what would you tell Joe that you would want to sort of like either like improve upon or modify that would have helped you have a better experience this weekend?
Well, so I've got a list. And like we were talking about before we started the episode, I'm very much a praise in public, give feedback in private kind of guy. I do have an AAR coming to staff. I don't know if I'm going to have it finished and sent to them by the time that this podcast gets aired. Just busy guy. But some of the big things, some of the big things that I would say, I'm always a proponent of giving me. Sorry, I'm looking at my AAR at the same time. Always give me more lore. The more, the better. Because in my opinion, the players that don't care about it. They're not going to read it in the first place. They might not even read the tax op in the first, or the rule book in the first place. That's why we have safety briefings where we have to show the rule video, a 25-minute video again. But for the players that do care, man, give me more of that lore. Give me more of a reason that, hey, if I'm in Green's fob and we're getting our shit kicked in, give me a reason that I can get into my own character's head and get back out there. It really kind of puts the LARP into Airsoft, but that's just how I am. And Glick and I talked about that when we talked about Stag Ops. We'd always love more lore, first and foremost.
That's actually such a really great point, what you just said, too. It's like the people who don't care, but the people who do care, like you probably can't give them enough. Like, why would you? And actually, I take this point and I'm going to apply it to my own thinking now, because it's like, why would I not give more? Right? A quick write-up is fine, but like if someone's going to take the time to read the write-up and care about it, they probably would like an extra couple paragraphs, right? Or like a couple pages, maybe. I don't know.
And as much as I hate to say it, like lore is easy now that we have AI tools. Like obviously put your own flair into it and use AI to help you write that out and actually make it into a body. But like, it's easy. It's
absolutely.
And I would love to help out with that if P3 wanted. Just keep in mind that I'm not going to be around the Colorado area forever with military move cycles. Other sort of big thing is, and I'm going to keep on harping every single event organizer that I see about this, but make your maps as good as possible and make them with MGRS or some kind of actual geo-referenced grid system on them. you can make the argument, and this is, I've got this clear as day in my AAR, but uh, there is potentially some pushbacks from some players who say, "Hey, I've never had any experience with MGRS before. I've never had experience with LandNav before." Good. Okay, that's fine. In organized milsim, it is super easy for you to hold 4 navigation cadre led like crash course map courses. It's super easy. MGRS is easy, and YouTube University is out there. It is not hard to learn, and
Mm-hmm.
it really improves the players. It really improves their immersion, and like if you give CP points in MGRS that they have to like maybe plot themselves on a map or something else along those lines, you could make the argument that, hey, well, maybe this is a degraded environment milsim, and this is the best intel we've got. And fair, depends on the environment you're running, depends on the sort of flavor of milsim that you're running. But if you're running a anywhere like in a 21st century milsim, we have so many intel gathering things out there between drones, between satellite, between just modern mapping tools, that there's no reason that we shouldn't at least enter the AO with a good topo map. Especially something like this where it's a lot of rolling hills, and a topo map is huge for seeing where defilade and where like key terrain and key overlook places are.
Yeah,
It's a huge
and
thing.
it's this is a really good point that you raise. And this op that we have coming up in August is my first time ever using MGRS
Yeah.
for map making. Mostly because previously all the maps would have been at Frontline,
Mm-hmm.
and Frontline is so small that if I look at it on MGRS, um, I don't know how many grids it is, but it's not very many.
I think you
So
said it was 2 acres. Is that right?
it's like 2 or 3 acres, something like that.
Yeah.
So like fully zoomed in, yeah, it's not very. It's not very useful, put it that way. The other thing is like, well, it's by the bus or whatever. Like it's so small. Like, but at this op that we're doing, like the area is massive. It's like over 100 acres, well over 100 acres. I think it's over
Yeah.
500 acres if I'm not mistaken.
That's what
Anyways,
you think.
point is, MGRS is useful there, and like you're
Yeah.
saying, you got me thinking about topo as well, because yeah, Google Maps is great, but you could also just do topo, right? And that would be helpful, especially considering that there is a little bit of rolling terrain. It's not Colorado. Don't get me wrong, but
Yeah.
like we got a couple of bumps along the flat, right? So it'd be nice to be able to see them on the map for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, anybody that's listening to this, feel free to reach out. I'm very open to DMs about map making, and I can give you a lot of the resources that I've got, at least, if you want to bring that to your next build. The other thing, too, that you mentioned with those smaller areas, especially if it's an op that you haven't necessarily been to before, or certainly in this case, an op that we haven't, or an AO that we haven't played in years. There's a small community that plays at Two Chicks fairly regularly, called Pioneers of the Apocalypse. There's some really good friends of mine, but Airsoft doesn't come to this AO very much. If you've got another place like that where, hey, we don't come to this very often, but it's still small, and a lot of the buildings probably look the same. There's also another tool out there you can use called Grid Reference Graphics, or GRGs. Any military person out there that's prior service probably knows what I'm talking about at this point. But GRGs, there's plenty of makers out there that you can use to label like certain areas, like, hey, this is target reference point Chevy. This one over here is Dodge. This is Ford.
Mm-hmm.
To lay out the battle space in macro, and then you shrink into micro, and then you can actually start numbering buildings. Certainly useful at a place like Guardian Center, certainly useful at any big like Mount Village is useful, but certainly something you can bring in as well that includes that little extra immersion above, like, hey, we understand we're doing a milsim here at this area that we've open played at a lot. We have the bus, we have the this, but could you imagine that you show up to an event that you potentially paid some money for, and you get handed a mission packet that has a GRG? It's like, oh shit, I've played in this area before, but okay, bus is target reference point Greyhound, sweet, and that's used for this thing. Like, that'd be
Yeah.
cool, and that would maybe at least make some players keep coming back. And I would probably bring that up. I'm going to bring that up in the in to Joe when I send this AR to him. They're like, hey, if you want to make some GRGs for dynamic and go airheads, more than happy to. I
That's
live for
also
that
such a
stuff.
really good point because I think it also ties into what you're saying about the lore, which is that people who don't care about the maps are not going to care about the maps, but the
100%.
people who do care are definitely going to care. And the amount of effort that's required to, yes, of course, like you can spend a lot of time creating maps, don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but you can create a perfectly usable map like using like the topo tool you were talking about before, or like map.army, which is what I've used.
Oh yeah,
Like,
App.army works great.
right, like you can do all that stuff, and the amount of time, you can certainly spend as much time as you care to in there for sure, but it's not a huge investment,
Yeah.
and adds again a tremendous amount of, I guess, precision to your play, but also to your production value. It's like, oh no, it's not just a battleship map, it's, oh, this is legit,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
And clearly having, good maps and having a good Blue Force tracker out there didn't make a whole lot of a difference in the way that we played. So
Sure.
I definitely would not sling this as do this and your airsoft player will get better. No, that's not the case here. But depending on what you wanted to get out of, I think that any prepared citizen should be able to read a basic map, should be able to read MGRS or USNG or basic lat long. They all kind of work the same way. And once you have one and got the scaling, the rest are pretty easy. And if you want to use airsoft for just brushing off those skills, sure, why not? There's nothing
Yeah,
stopping you at
absolutely.
least. I
Yeah.
think. I don't know. Looking at maybe some other things here for. I have a whole list of different things that like, hey, these are different things that I could maybe include as small tweaks to rules or whatnot. But really nothing's like something like this one thing would have changed this entire event. It's not necessarily the
Yeah.
case. There were certain things like I kind of wish there were limits of advance around the fobs, but they were pretty arbitrary. There's some other events that I've been to that very clearly define where that limit of advance is, and it'd be nice to have that. It's just some streamers tied on trees. That's like, hey, this is an engaged zone. This is a no engaged zone. That'd be nice. Things like um, uh, like having a watch as a required item. A Casio watch is $8 on Amazon, and there were a lot of people that there's a 5-minute bleed up time, but they're not carrying watches, and they're certainly not about to pull out their phone to go, oh, yep, and I'm starting bleed out time now. And that'd be nice to kind of see. Maybe
Mm-hmm.
in the future, like if you require closed-toed shoes, a good pair of closed-toed shoes is a lot more expensive than a Casio watch, especially if you're coming to airsoft anyway. It's something that I would really like to
Yeah,
see.
just put the watch face on the inside of your wrist and you'll be fine. Like this is all we do. I don't know if you do that, but I wear this literally everywhere all day long. The only time it comes off my wrist is when I charge it. And so when I go to airsoft, I just like whoop, roll it into the
Mhm.
inside and cross my fingers.
Yeah,
Maybe this is going to be a face pro moment for me where I'm like, oh, I never needed it, and then I started wearing it. I'm like, man, I should have been doing this from the start. But
absolutely.
I
And
think, yeah,
like given wear a watch every day, and I have it set up for different ways versus airsoft or flying because you need different things. But
hmm
if you're worried about the glint side of things, sweet, like you said, turn it inside. Get a grease pen and cover it. Make a duct tape cover for it real quick.
I
There's a
was
lot of
mostly worried about it getting shot with a BB, more than the glint stuff. Now that you've mentioned that, though, I was like, I've never even thought about that.
there
But
were
yeah.
there were a lot of times this weekend where detection of adversary players was because of their glint, was because of iPro glint, watch glint,
hmm
scope glint. There was a lot of it this weekend, more than I honestly expected to have. Not that it made a whole lot of a difference, clearly, but yeah, uh, you can cover up the glint of a watch in so many different ways. Getting shot out, that's honestly very very fair. You can certainly turn it in. Um, for any of you out there that run Garmin Instincts, my Garmin Instinct has taken a 1.5 5-foot hit before and been okay. So they're ruggedized. They're not the worst thing in the world, and Garmin's got a pretty good warranty, all things said and done. So uh,
I don't know how they'd react to be like, what happened to your screen? I don't want to talk about it. It was a BB hit. A what?
what? Yeah,
Yeah.
and
But
I
so,
mean,
like, what you're talking about now, like with the watches and stuff, like ultimately, and I know you have a lot of feedback for them that you're going to share with them, which I think is totally fair. Like, but that's at the end of the day, like that's all sort of like small potato stuff, right? Like,
oh yeah,
like like you said, like, did this make is there one big thing that would have changed the entire weekend for the green team? Like, probably not.
Oh no.
Um, but yeah, I think the great thing about like having conversation like this is the idea that we can both love an event and the event runners and what they're trying to do, and also recognize the opportunity to say, hey, you know what, like, with the proper feedback, like, this could be even better.
Yeah.
Right. I would not take my money back. Like, I do not regret attending your event,
Oh no.
even though like I got my ass kicked all weekend long. But in future, if you did this or that, like, I think it might make a difference. And whether they do anything with that feedback or not, I mean, if they care about it, likely they will take the feedback because it's coming from a good place.
Yeah.
But like, at the end of the day, it's up to them to take that and seek it out and then make changes. And one of the things that I've really come to believe about like the best airsoft promoters, whether it's like Gordon at Stag Ops or some of the others that we've had the opportunity to talk to, they care about that feedback
100%.
because they actually will, as much as they're able to, make the changes required to make sure that their players keep having a good time. Not just because it's for the money, but because they care about creating this community, right? Just like you do.
Absolutely. And we definitely saw that this weekend. I mean, hell, Joe even got emotional at the end of the week going like, hey, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to run a milsim company, and here I am. I'm doing it. It's very cool to see. He's very dedicated to players, just the same as Jason is, just the same as Big Red is, just the same as the myriad of people that I met. And this is kind of like my big, huge underlined foot stomp thing that I'm going to put in the AR, was just like the accessibility of these people. There was no high and mightiness. They're very down to earth, which is something that I've kind of come to expect from a lot of event organizers. But you know, in the case of Gordon, in the case of Bo, in the case of Josh, there's a million moving parts to putting a milsim together and making it good, and taking the time to talk to players and kind of be down to earth, and also not keep things like Joe is very much not I have a secret kind of player. I'm sure he would have told me anything that I asked. All things said and done, but he was very good at making time for the players. So he cares about feedback quite a bit. So that's my big like foot stomp, is like keep up the accessibility. I came into this event, my typical Wyoming crew that I play with had something else planned for this weekend, so they weren't able to make it. And just because I was curious, I came to this event. I knew almost no one. The only people that I knew were people that I had reached out to on the Discord beforehand and said like, hey, who's in Whiskey 2? I made a thing where I made a bunch of embroidered patches for people that say like Whiskey 3 or Victor 3 and stuff that I sold at the event. But those are the only people that I even remotely knew. And that was just knowing a Discord, screen name and everything else. So coming in and knowing nobody and leaving with like, I've now got like 8 more people in my phone saved as, name here, dude with the 416 from the milsim. Like, it's going to be a lot of good times. A lot of I got to laugh at this because the number of times I was invited to Copperhead, which is the AMS event that's down in New Mexico. And it's only, for most of the Colorado guys, it's about like a 7-hour drive. For me, it's closer to 9. Unfortunately, I've already got another service commitment going on during that weekend, or else I'd be going. But the number of times I got asked to Copperhead, like, dude, are you going to Copperhead? You should go with us. I'm like, sounds awesome. I can't go, but thanks for, and if I had $1, I could have bought myself a Chipotle burrito on the way home. So it was really cool going in, knowing no one, and coming out with a lot of really good new friends. And I kind of think that's what community is all about, especially this kind of extended airsoft community. And there wasn't like a whole lot of malice. There wasn't a whole lot of like drama in this community, which was nice, or at least none that was evident to me in just one interaction with them. So good things all said and done.
And if really that's not what airsoft is all about, I don't know what is, man.
Yeah, for sure. Listen, I mean, it's about slinging some plastic and having some fun and looking cool at the same time. But you should never leave an event going, man, fuck that guy. You should never leave an event doing that. And it doesn't happen very often. So
100%. Well, listen, thank you so much for taking the time to come on and have a chat with me about all this kind of stuff and your love of map making. I feel like every time we talk, like I'm discovering one other topic that we're gonna have to need to do like a deep dive about.
Oh
Like
boy.
first it was helicopters, now it's maps. Like that helicopter episode, guys, is still coming. I promise.
Yeah.
At some point down the line. But I was just really excited to hear about this event and
Yeah.
get your feedback on it. So thanks so much for being on the show, man.
Absolutely, Phil. It's always great to be here anytime, and thanks for having me. It's always good to be on.
Thanks, guys, for listening. That's all I've got for you this week. Take care. We'll talk to you soon.